All right, everybody, we're going to be covering how to double dip in terms of marketing efficiency and sales efficiency with a properly structured MQL scoring mechanism that will not only rank your best leads, but route these leads based on their score to your best closers. Because one of the common pitfalls that we felt into when we were scaling accounts is that we were starting to generate more leads, and then we had to bring in new reps. And when we brought in these new reps, our close rate reduced slightly, but we needed those new reps to take on the new volume, but we were kind of hindering our performance because sometimes these new reps, they would get really qualified customers that if a more experienced closer or a sales representative were taking the call, he would likely close in a very high package. So even if this lead converted with the new rep, they might not be converted at the maximum revenue potential. So the way we structure the MQL scoring is twofold. We obviously go through the process of calculating the lead score and just reverse engineering our historical data to identify the pockets of profitable customers, but we're also integrating these high MQL leads into Hyros, if you use Hyros, to send these back to the media buying team. And also what we're doing is we're setting up the MQL with the lead routing system so that whenever a high quality lead comes through, it's getting routed to the high quality closer. And then you can break down your sales team performance based on tiers as well, or MQL bands. So with that being said, let me clarify what I mean by that. So the process of creating this MQL scoring system, it's going to look something like this, where we're going to be covering each of these things. So you don't have to worry about it, but I'm just going to go through at least in the beginning, the legend, because this is important, where the blue is the lead capture, the yellow is the scoring engine, the green is the tier assignment, the purple is the lead routing, the orange is the CRM integration, the brown is the database storage, the black is the analytics, the red is marketing feedback, and the blue it's optimization. So the lead submits the form, and then whatever platform you're using, it's Typeform or Jotform, those are the two ones that I know this can be done. You're going to do the calculations, and then you're going to set up your conditional redirects based on these calculations. What we want to qualify the lead for, if you currently don't have this in place, is there's a framework created by IBM called BANT. And what we're doing is we're pretty much validating for budget, authority, necessity, and timeline. We want to know if they can make the decision. We want to know if they really want to solve this problem. We want to know how much they've set aside to solve this problem and when they need to solve this problem. And obviously, if you're doing B2B, you can be a little bit more direct, but sometimes if you're doing D2C, the way you have to ask these questions is more of like a copywriting, because the form itself has to be written in a way where it's also part of the funnel. Right? You're not just asking like, oh, can you make the decision in the call? Oh, you really need this? Yes. Oh, okay. How much money do you have? Oh, nice. Can you do this right now? I mean, people are tired of this. So you want to apply these principles in a way that makes sense in the funnel that you're building. And then once we do that, we also want to bucket these leads based on their scoring ranges as tier 1 leads, tier 2 leads, and tier 3 leads. The reason why we're doing this is because we are ignoring these minutes here, but we're routing the best leads to the best closers, and then the okay leads to the closers that are like successfully ramping up and performing. Sometimes these closers are also the same, the tier 1 and tier 2. And then the tier 3 leads, we're giving these leads to the new reps, because what happens is when you're scaling, you hire these people and your performance can decline if you don't have these structured processes. And it's also part of the process, right? If you think about when you're bringing in new sales reps, right, some of them are just not going to work, and even though they're not going to work, they're still going to take calls, and this could impact your metrics. So definitely what you want to be doing is building this MQL system so that whenever you are generating these low value leads, you're routing them to your new closers so they can get more reps and sets. In fact, a lot of people, when they look at these tier 3 leads, they typically don't even take a call. And at least on my personal experience, those leads have been very, very important for the scalability of a lot of our accounts. And in fact, one of like the tier 3 leads, for for example, is responsible for $11 million in one of the operations that we currently manage. So think about that for a second, right? If your close rate goes down because you're talking to least qualifying leads, but you're still making a lot more money, what is better? Is it better to brag that you have a 50% close rate on these tier 1 leads? Or is it better to really make millions of dollars a year in your operations and make sure that like you have a proper way to segment your close rate? And you understand, yes, if I was qualifying people super hard, I'll be closing at a much higher rate. But because I'm playing like a scalable game, a volume game, I want to make sure I'm being efficient with all the leads that come through. So I am bringing in the tier 3 leads and routing them to the tier 3 closers. And then the way that we're going to leverage this information on the marketing side, again, is through the CRM. So we're always using the CRM as the backbone of the scalability of the sales operations. And then we are sending this MQL score, the application information, and everything that we've already discussed in the program to Supabase. In this case, this is our database because we're going to be using Metabase to build our analytics. Within Metabase, we can categorize MQL scoring ranges based on custom expressions. You don't need any code to do this. If you have any questions on how to do this, like just reach out. Seriously, like I really freaking want you guys to succeed. Again, I don't want this to be a program where it's like you're going to be left to the oblivion. I'm sick and tired of these types of programs. I'm sick and tired of having just, 90-day account manager. No, man, it's a lifetime account manager. You know what I mean? Like I just want you to freaking win. But going back to this, we're going to be able to use Metabase to categorize these leads. And then also, this isn't necessarily the right arrow here. If these leads are like high MQL, we're also sending this information back as a tag to Hyros so that once you're analyzing the performance of your funnels, you can filter by the MQL and you can see which campaigns are bringing in the high MQL, medium MQL, and low MQL. So you can scale more of these campaigns. And if you know this information, you know which hooks are bringing in these high MQLs and which specific ads are bringing in these high MQLs, you can create variations of those ads, right? So you see how many benefits there are in just ranking your leads, right? So once we send this to Metabase, we're going to be able to understand the information, the conversion analysis, the tier optimization, and then you can do a monthly review. Typically, how we analyze this is we look at the tier conversion rates. So what's the average order value per tier? What is the close rate per tier? And then we're just identifying which tier we need to optimize in order to grow the business, right? You can have also different goals per tier. So that is essentially from a high level what this is. In terms of the information that we want to ask the leads, right? We're going to go over like the BANT framework and how to update this in the CRM. I'm going to show you in another video how to do this with JotFarm, how we actually do this through the CRM that you've been granted access for a year with this program, which is Go High Level, by the way. I'm not gonna say, oh my god, it's a custom CRM. Hey, it's white label Go High Level. When you sign up for this program, I just share with you 1 year access inside our CRM. So if you want to use it, I'm more than welcome, man. Like, go for it. If you didn't know about this and you're knowing this now, let us know. I'm more than happy to just extend your time period. Really, I want to make money, a lot of money with this, but the type of money that I want to make is on your success. It's on your level of happiness when you come to this program. So like, I'm not gonna be, oh, okay, you lost 6 months because you didn't see this. Listen, it's totally fine. If you genuinely didn't see that you have access to the CRM, I'll give you access. I'll extend your period. All right. So with that being said, let's go over this document real quick, and then I'll be sharing here with you a little bit of what that looks like in terms of analyzing the data once you implement this. And in the other videos, we're gonna go through the implementation. So creating the MQL score and finding your best leads. Basically, what we're building is a simple scoring system that shows who's ready to buy and who is more qualified, and a 3-tier lead structure so the right reps get the right leads, and a way to auto rotate these leads based on the score. So no guesswork, no like, oh, I like this rep better than this other one. You're just basically trying to optimize your sales, right? And this is like a simple thing that yields so much results. Like, you wouldn't believe how easy it is to implement this and how many, like, just a fraction of people are actually doing this. It's unbelievable. And what you'll see most people do is that they have a form that they qualify. If the person's qualified, they send to a closer for a 45-minute, 1-hour call. If they are like medium MQL, they send to a setter for like a discovery. And if they don't qualify, they just don't send anywhere. We just exclude all this process. And what we do is just we have closers for all tiers, especially if you're looking to scale. And what we're doing with the setters is just we're using AI. We're not using any human setter. And we're going to go over like how to implement this and all that stuff. So why does the MQL score matters? Basically, when you treat all leads the same, 3 things happen, right? The new reps get tier 1 leads and just fumble them. So they can close the deal, don't get me wrong, but they may not close at the best average order value. And if they miss out on that close and they're not very familiar with your sales process, they can actually hinder your company reputation as well. So that is one of the biggest issues. I was talking with one of the clients from Click to Close. I jumped on a one-on-one with him, and basically he's scaling this offer, but as he's bringing in new reps, he's just noticing that they're burning through leads. So we just literally set up this simple MQL redirect system in his type form, and I showed him how to create the event types. In his case, he uses Calendly, and how to set up the redirects based on the customer conditions, so that once he's bringing in the new reps, the leads that they'll be talking to even be the leads that you were not even talking in the first place. And they can train, they can get some reps, and if they close deals, guess what? Those leads you were not even talking to. So you're actually missing out on revenue potential. And then the second thing is that top closers lose motivation because leads are randomly assigned. Like when you have a star, a superstar, a crusher, you have to understand that this sales rep, he has a life cycle. And the better you treat this rep, the less likely he'll be to reach his burnout period. And the best way to piss off a good closer is to give him leads that aren't as likely to convert. So leads that they should have actually be going to a newer rep, because that way this rep can really maximize his time, his potential, make the most amount of money possible. Because you got to understand, when this rep makes a lot of money, you're making a ton of money. So with top closers, they will stay at the top, but for them to keep motivated, you definitely want to make sure that you're also showing them that you're giving them the best leads. And the cool thing about this system is that the MQL system, you can A/B test different ways as you acquire data, but I wouldn't recommend you doing this right now. Just implement based on what we're going to be covering here. But the sales team calendar tiers, you can reset every month. So if a new rep comes in a month and he's absolutely crushing, you can reset the calendar so that this rep, instead of being a tier 3 rep, next month he's a tier 2 rep, or maybe a tier 1 rep. So essentially the tier 1 reps are fighting by performing to try to stay on top. The tier 3 reps, they're coming in, they are killing to really put themselves in the team and also climb up the rankings. So what that does, a healthy level of competition within the sales department, where everybody's just trying to get to the best leads, and they know that they need to perform every month, because every month the calendar distribution resets. All right, and if you're wondering how to do this, we're gonna cover all of this, so chill. Just understand the concepts, because this took us so long, like so much money we lost, so like just painful to get this done. And I want to make sure that you understand this so that you don't just minimize the importance of this, right? Because it may sound like, yeah, MQL, yeah, lead routing, blah, 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 blah. But it's like, you definitely may not be implementing the way that I'm suggesting here. So without a scoring system, you're essentially wasting money sending great leads to improve in reps. You can predict outcomes because lead quality isn't measured. Your team loses the competitive edge that drives growth. So how do we make sure we implement this successfully? So step number 1 is getting the data ready. Before you build the score, you just want to make sure that if you're doing applications and things along those lines, you probably have like application data. So all the applications that your leads have submitted, the booking schedule data, the calls show data, and the closed deals data. And if you were to think in terms of like parameters that we're receiving on each conversion, for example, here we got form submission date, let's say their occupation, how long they have been following influencer XYZ, how long have they been trying to accomplish XYZ, why haven't they accomplished this yet, decision making question. We're gonna go over this like at a later step here, and let's do like how much budget set aside. So for example, we got all this information here, right? But what we're doing in this stage on Supabase, whenever we receive this data of the booked call, the application, etc., like we are forwarding to our database all the form submission data. Then we are also sending the call schedule date, the booking page name, things along those lines, the closer name, and essentially when we have the call taken, we're always forwarding the historical information throughout the database. All right, and then we have the call taken date, the closer name again. So because we're forwarding this, I'm just gonna exclude this, and let's just do like this. Then when we got the closed deal, guess what? we have all this information plus the product sold, the total cash collected, and let's say the payment method, just as an example. So what that does is it would allow us to, whenever we receive the application, given we're forwarding all this information, to find the MQL information here, right? So you can see that in this example here, we have all this information, and I'm just gonna like get rid of some of this stuff here. But basically, if you were to imagine, right, these would be like your customer conditions, right? Occupation, their how long been following, their budget, if they're a decision maker, how long they've been thinking about doing this, when they want to do this, when they want to do this. So these are your application questions, and as you're forwarding, what we see here is like dimensions. So their occupation, their how long they've been following, like the answers on the form. What we get is the culmination of the total cash collected per these segments, the total number of deals per these segments, the close rate per these segments, and we see which pockets of customers are bringing in the highest results. So that way you can validate the segments of customers that are the most profitable. Now, once you do this, you can ask yourself which sources converted better, what answers are most common in closed deals, what were the worst performing answers, so that you can start building out your customer profile. Then the second step is building the score, right? We score leads based on 4 core factors. Each one you can do worth 25 points just to begin with, but as you build this layout here that I've shared, you will also use this information in ChatGPT and you ask to weight the importance of each parameter, because let's say occupation may have a 2-time importance, 2-time weight on how long they've been following you. If they are, let's say, retired business owner, they've been following you for a week and they have the budget, this answer here plays a much greater role in the conversion than this answer here, for example. So when we look back in here, we don't want to be like just doing each variable it's 25 points. Maybe this one is 50 points and the other ones have a lower weight in the decision making. So like this will be the biggest scoring factor, right? So the only way for you to know this is with the data. You can't really come up with this, right? But if you want to start from a place where it's like the beginning, you can just use the BANT framework, where basically we're going to use authority. So in this example, we're using role and score. And then a B2B example is a marketing director, a $10 million company books a call. They scored 20 because they're a manager, not a decision maker. So that's pretty much it. And the founder scores 25 because they can say, yes, we're going to do it on the spot. And then B2B example, husband fills out a form and say, I need to talk to my wife first. Like I'm not the sole decision maker. So the score is 10. And then a single parent says like, hey, I'm the ultimate decision maker. All right. So if I like what I see in the call, I may be able to buy. And then the need, we want to get the level of urgency. So it's interesting because in operations as well, we have something called the Eisenhower matrix, where is how we rank the importance and the urgency of the things that we're doing within our operations. So like the most important and urgent things are the ones that we need to do right now. The urgent things that are not important are the ones that we need to delegate. The important things that are not urgent are the ones that we need to schedule for a later future. And the non-important and non-urgent things are the ones that we need to ask ourselves, why the hell is it there? We just delete. So it's interesting because when we look at the MQL analysis, we're kind of using similar framework to understand how important that is for the person, how urgent they want to solve that, how much they have to solve the problem, and who are they in terms of making the decision during the call. Right? So it's pretty interesting information here. So the need here, it's the urgency level. It's the urgent, serious, or just curious. That is going to modify the scoring ability, right? So for example, revenue drop and we need more leads now. That's a 25. We're exploring our options for Q3, for example. It's still like, well, Q3 is next week, but there's just an example here. And B2C example is like, I need to lose 30 pounds before my wedding in 30 days. All right, that's an urgency thing, right? And the B2C example, I'm just checking things out. So that is kind of like nothing, right? And then budget, right? They have the confirmed budget. They have a possibility of a budget. They have no budget. So we have $10,000 a month to allocate. Depends on your pricing, not set budget. And then B2C example, I've saved $5,000 for this. I think I can make it work if there is a plan. I can't spend anything right now. So here's like just ways for you to think about how to do the MQL system on your end. And then last but not least, timeline. Here's one to do like ready, if they're ready now within 30 to 90 days or no timeline. So we want to launch next week. So that's urgency there, right? And let's revisit after the holidays. It's not very important, right? So B2C example is like, I'm ready to start this month, and then I'll think about it and get back to you. That is not very urgent. So step 3 is where we classify the leads. So whenever we did the marketing qualification, we want to leverage this information and route to the best closers. So tier 1 closers will receive the tier 1 leads. In this case, the leads with the higher MQL. So best leads go to the top closers. And in terms of contacts, right, in this case, this is not really that relevant because we are redirecting them to a calendar. So I can really delete this. And then tier 2, it's medium priority leads. So we're going to be assigning to tier 2 closers. And tier 3, it's a low priority leads where we're going to be routing them to the lower junior reps. So why this matters? Because the reps must earn their spot in the calendar. If they perform, they move up. If they underperform, they move down. So what we're going to be covering is how to build a form. And then I'm going to show you how to build in Typeform, how to build in Jotform, and then how to integrate in the CRM setup, save to Supabase, etc. How to analyze this in the next videos. But this gave you a good idea on how we think about the MQL scoring. And then also, this is how we typically analyze the MQL scoring, right? We can look here tier 1 close rates, tier 2 close rates, tier 3 close rates. We can see that the tier 1 close rates on a daily basis or on a weekly basis, it's greater than the one in the tier 3, but the bulk of revenue sometimes comes from the tier 3. So it's important to understand that there's no like right answer when it comes to having a high close rate. Obviously, you want to have a high close rate, but I'd rather have a high close rate, okay close rate, like a 28, 30%, 25% on $4, $5, $6 million than on having a 50, 60% close rate on like $400,000 or 350. So it's always the context. You want to make sure that you're being simple about your analysis and you're not overcomplicating things, but you also don't want to be simplistic when it comes to the way that you look at the business. All right. So in the next few videos, we're going to cover how to do the MQL scoring on both Jotform and Typeform, forward this into the CRM, and how to extract the value of this information through Metabase. All right. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.